At 2 hours and 10 minutes after midnight on October 27, 2025, the crew of a Pantsir S-1 missile battery stationed at Domodedovo airport was executing standard air defense protocols, methodically eliminating Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles from the night sky. Then a critical alert flashed across their targeting computer. The system was launching interceptor missiles every 3 seconds, yet the incoming swarm showed no signs of diminishing. This was no longer a defensive engagement. It had transformed into a desperate war of attrition. Based on their remaining missile inventory, they had exactly 75 seconds before the first wave of unstoppable targets would penetrate the airport's defensive perimeter. The reason was brutally simple. The Russians were being systematically deceived into engaging an army of electronic phantoms. This entire assault force of 193 targets was a meticulously engineered deception operation. 154 of them were expendable decoys programmed with a singular mission: to die spectacularly while exhausting Russian missile reserves. The genuine threat consisted of just 39 Liutyi unmanned combat aerial vehicles flying in tactical formation among the decoys, waiting for their operational window. The decoys functioned using an advanced electronic warfare technique called ghost mode. Each decoy broadcast its radar position with a 3.6-second transmission delay. This meant the Pantsir's multi-million-dollar interceptor missile arrived at an empty coordinate in space, the precise location where the drone had been 3.5 seconds earlier. While the Pantsir crew observed 34 successful detonations illuminating the darkness, they remained completely oblivious that for every Phantom they destroyed, 5 additional drones had already bypassed their defensive zone. But this tactical trap wouldn't have been executable without Russia's first catastrophic miscalculation, which occurred 40 minutes prior. The entire 193 drone swarm first had to penetrate Moscow's outer defensive shield, the S-400 long-range radar system. That system is configured with a Doppler filter to disregard ground clutter, slow-moving objects near the surface. A drone flying at merely 20 feet above ground level doesn't register as a hostile threat. It appears as background noise. The S-400 detected the swarm, classified it as non-threatening, and permitted it to pass without launching a single interceptor. While the Pantsir crew was engaged in their desperate defense at Domodedovo, the primary assault was developing 20 miles away at Zhukovsky military airport. This entire operation represented a classic two-pronged assault designed by tactical planners with exceptional understanding of Russian defensive psychology. The 154 decoys had one mission: fly at high altitude, 500 feet, illuminate Russian radar systems like a beacon, and function as the world's most expensive skeet shooting targets. But while the high-altitude decoys were generating maximum radar signature overhead, the 39 actual combat drones were operating in the dirt. At 2 hours and 12 minutes after midnight, they entered the final phase of their approach vector. They flew at just 20 feet altitude, utilizing the dense fog and rolling terrain of the Zhukovsky forest as their natural stealth environment. Each of those 39 drones had an artificial intelligence navigation system loaded with a flight path of 1,024 separate waypoints. It's equivalent to programming a cruise missile with the agility of a hummingbird, designed to navigate through every documented gap in Russia's defensive network. At 2 hours and 15 minutes after midnight, the Pantsir S-1 system at Domodedovo wasn't engaged in a conventional battle. It was the victim of a classic denial-of-service attack. The 154 decoys weren't programmed to simply fly and be destroyed. They were programmed to be the most resource-intensive targets imaginable, flying in layered repeating waves that forced the Pantsir's targeting computer to dedicate 100% of its processing capacity to tracking and engaging them. From a technical warfare perspective, this is brilliant execution. The decoys functioned like a botnet flooding a server with illegitimate traffic. The Pantsir's powerful computer became so overwhelmed with processing the false requests that it had zero bandwidth remaining to scan for the genuine threats. While the $15 million system was effectively transformed into an expensive paperweight running diagnostics on junk data, the 39 killer drones were being uploaded directly to Russia's most sensitive military hardware, completely unopposed. At 2 hours and 25 minutes after midnight, the Russian commanders at Zhukovsky finally realized they were being tactically manipulated. The decoy swarm was a distraction, and their Pantsir systems were out of the engagement, so they escalated with overwhelming force. They scrambled their apex predators, Sukhoi 35 fighter jets. These $80 million aircraft tore through the sky, their pilots tasked with one straightforward mission: search and destroy. The fog and ground clutter made their radar systems useless, so they switched to their most lethal weapon: heat-seeking missiles. These are digital bloodhounds designed to lock onto the faintest thermal signature of an engine and maintain pursuit. The pilots ripped through the fog, scanning for the 39 Liutyi drone, but they found nothing, just cold, empty air. So where were the 39 killers? They had gone into tactical hibernation. This is where Ukrainian tactical innovation reaches an entirely new level, utilizing the chaos of the decoy swarm as cover. Each drone had flown to a pre-programmed hibernation coordinate, a thicket of trees, a shallow drainage ditch, or an overgrown culvert of Zhukovsky's 50-year-old Soviet storm drain system, and landed. Then they shut down their engines completely. A cold gasoline engine has zero thermal signature. It radiates the same amount of heat as the frozen mud surrounding it. Attempting to find that with a high-tech infrared scope is like trying to locate a specific parked car in a crowded parking lot by only searching for running engines. Russia's $80 million fighter jets were rendered completely ineffective by the simple act of shutting off an engine. At 2 hours and 40 minutes after midnight, with his fighter jets flying blind and his automated defenses tied in tactical knots, Putin executed the only option he had remaining. He unleashed 500 Spetsnaz operators, Russia's elite special forces, into the fog-drenched forest around Zhukovsky. They established a perimeter, created overlapping fields of fire, and deployed sensitive acoustic sensors to detect the faintest electronic hum. They were the most dangerous predators on the battlefield. This was the true limitation of Ukraine's tactical plan. They had outsmarted the computers and outmaneuvered the jets, but now they faced 500 highly trained human operators. The drones were concealed, but they were also trapped inside a tightening steel cage. For the Ukrainian commanders monitoring on their screens, the question became terrifyingly straightforward. Do we activate them now and risk a bloodbath, or wait and risk them being discovered one by one? At 2 hours and 50 minutes after midnight, the Ukrainian commanders made their choice. The encrypted signal pulsed from Kyiv. "Wake up, all of you, right now." The entire forest erupted. The sound of 39 engines roaring to life simultaneously was the dinner bell for the Spetsnaz. Muzzle flashes illuminated the fog as every operator opened fire on the nearest sound. This was a bloodbath. 7 drones were shredded before their rotors could even achieve full lift capacity. Another 5 were hit as they struggled to climb above the tree line, spiraling back to earth in balls of fire. In less than 90 seconds, 12 drones were converted into burning wreckage. The Spetsnaz were lethal, and they had just exacted a heavy price. But it was a chaotic, desperate firefight. For every drone an operator could target, 2 more were already lifting off from a different direction. The fog that had blinded them now became the drones' best shield. As the surviving 27 drones cleared the tree line, battered but airborne, the Russian commanders probably thought they had just won a major tactical victory. They were wrong. They had been looking at the wrong battlefield the entire time. While their soldiers were fighting for their lives in the forest, the real target, the massive undefended jet fuel depot at the heart of Zhukovsky, was being monitored in crystal clear high definition, streamed directly from the airport's own compromised security cameras. The Russians had won the tactical engagement, but Ukraine was about to win the strategic war. At 2 hours and 52 minutes after midnight, the heart of Zhukovsky Airport was an island of calm in a sea of chaos. While their best soldiers were still pursuing echoes in the fog, the airport's ground crew was on a coffee break. They had no awareness that 27 vengeful, battle-hardened drones were screaming out of the darkness, converging on their position from multiple vectors. 43 seconds to impact. When the first drone hit the primary jet fuel tank, it wasn't a simple explosion. It was a physics lesson delivered with extreme prejudice. The drone's 110-pound warhead was a shaped charge designed not to blast, but to pierce. On impact, it unleashed a needle-thin jet of molten copper, screaming at 16,000 miles per hour, slicing through steel like a laser through paper. That jet sliced through the tank's reinforced steel wall. The jet of superheated plasma ignited a massive cloud of jet fuel, transforming thousands of gallons into a roaring fireball. The blast generated a localized electromagnetic pulse that disrupted unshielded electronics within a 300-foot radius, crippling nearby radar and drone controls. The ground shook as if from a 4.0 magnitude earthquake, a fireball lighting up the night like a second Sunday. Then came the darkness. The electromagnetic pulse hit. Every light, every radar screen, every radio on the base went dead. 1 second, they were in a functioning military airport. The next, they were in a dark, burning junkyard, deafened and blinded. The fireball over the fuel depot was just the beginning. The real damage was the silent cascading collapse that spread through the airport like a virus, transforming a functioning military base into a tomb in under 5 minutes. The surviving Spetsnaz operators reached for their satellite phones, but found only static. The chain of command wasn't just broken, it was vaporized. Junior officers were screaming for orders that their terrified commanders, trapped in dark, powerless command posts, couldn't provide. But Ukraine wasn't finished. The destruction of Zhukovsky wasn't the endgame, it was the starting gun for round 2. With Ukrainian intelligence confirming the base was deaf, dumb, and blind, a new order was issued. Phase 2 was green-lit. Russia's air response capability from the Moscow region was effectively zero. The sky was wide open. A second swarm of 50 Liutyi drones, already pre-positioned in Sumy, lifted into the air. Their target wasn't an airport. It was the vulnerable supply convoys now stuck on the highways leading to Moscow, completely exposed and with no air cover. At the same time, Ukrainian high-mobility artillery rocket system batteries, given pre-approved targets, began a relentless barrage, firing without any fear of counter-battery fire. The most humiliating part? The surviving S-400 batteries could see it all happening. Their screens, slowly coming back online, could detect the high-mobility artillery rocket system launches. They could detect the second drone swarm, but without orders from a functioning command center, they were legally and functionally paralyzed. All they could do was watch as their supply lines burned. In the 48 hours that followed, Moscow went into full damage control mode, but you can't conceal a 5-mile column of black smoke. Satellite imagery posted by open-source intelligence analysts confirmed the catastrophic damage. Russian state media went completely silent on any incident in the Bryansk region, but the clearest evidence came from the flight trackers. Over 100 international flights were canceled as Domodedovo and Zhukovsky were transformed into giant smoking parking lots. But the real story isn't about the burning fuel or the canceled flights. This operation fundamentally challenged Russian military doctrine. It proved that a concrete fortress defended by billion-dollar radar systems could be brought to its knees by approximately $5,000 drones and a 50-year-old storm drain. The cost-benefit analysis is devastating for traditional military powers. Ukraine deployed roughly $500,000 worth of assets to neutralize defensive systems worth hundreds of millions and destroy infrastructure worth billions. The timing was everything. This happened right as a new administration in Washington was threatening to cut aid, forcing Ukraine to prove it could fight and win independently. This strike was their answer. It sent a clear message to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization: your investment is paying dividends. It sent a message to Putin right before the Geneva negotiations: your position is weaker than you think. This operation represents a fundamental shift in modern warfare doctrine. The integration of artificial intelligence navigation systems with traditional electronic warfare created a force multiplier that existing defensive systems simply cannot counter. The 1024 waypoint navigation system allowed these drones to essentially think their way through the defensive network. This isn't just about flying low and slow. This is about adaptive routing that responds to the defensive environment in real time. The psychological component cannot be understated. By forcing Russian defenders to watch their own defeat unfold on their own security cameras, unable to respond, Ukraine didn't just win a tactical engagement. They shattered the illusion of Russian air defense invincibility. That psychological impact will echo through every future engagement. The attack on Zhukovsky and Domodedovo airports will be studied in military academies for generations, not because of the spectacular explosions, but because it represents a fundamental paradigm shift in how modern warfare is conducted. Ukraine proved that with limited resources, tactical creativity, and operational boldness, a smaller force can systematically dismantle the defensive systems of a much larger adversary. They proved that artificial intelligence, electronic warfare, and tactical deception can overcome billions of dollars in defensive hardware. Most importantly, they proved that the future of warfare isn't about who has the most expensive systems. It's about who can think 3 moves ahead, who can exploit the enemy's assumptions, and who has the courage to execute plans that seem impossible. The Russian commanders at Zhukovsky had every advantage: advanced radar systems, sophisticated missile batteries, elite special forces, and fighter jets. Yet they lost. They lost because they were fighting yesterday's war with yesterday's tactics, while Ukraine was writing the playbook for tomorrow. This strike proved Ukraine doesn't need permission to dominate the battlefield. They need resources, they need support, and they need time. But the tactical acumen, the operational courage, and the strategic vision, they already have that in abundance.